Okay, welcome everybody to the League of Women Voters Tacoma Pierce County Primary Candidate Forum for Tacoma Port Position number 4. I'm Lydia Zapeta, the moderator, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma Pierce County and Tacoma TV Tacoma and our community partners, I would like to thank the candidates. 9 candidates are listed for Port Position 4. C-Bay L and Scott Lewis decided not to run after all. However, their decisions were too late to withdraw from their filings. Brian Duffy, Christopher Pierce, and Christian Delina were unable to attend the forum. The candidates who have joined us are in ballot order: Mario Rivera, Scott, Don Meyer, Mary Bacon, and we're still waiting on Nirav Sheth. Welcome and thank you for being here. I ask each of you to confirm and that you agree with our ground rules, which among other things include addressing the issues and not making personal attacks. Could you all indicate that you agree to the ground rules?
I agree.
I agree as well.
And I'm getting a nod from Mary. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I ask you now to please mute yourself and not to talk unless it's your turn to speak. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. After that, the order of questions will rotate and each candidate will be asked the same question. At the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. The order for the opening 2-minute statements are in ballot order. So it will be Mario Rivera, Don Meyer, and Mary Bacon. Our timekeeper today is Susan Eidenschenk of the League of Women Voters Tacoma Pierce County, who will indicate when you have 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and when you should stop. You may finish your sentence when she indicates stop. So we'll start with opening statements, 2 minutes, and we'll start with Mario Rivera.
Hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Mario Rivera. I decided to run because I felt the need to be more a part of our community, as well as knowing the essentialness of Port of Tacoma is to our community, as well as bringing a more diverse aspect to the Port of Tacoma. I definitely feel that there's some things that have been lost over the years, and I've seen, as being a longshoreman, very briefly, I came to understand the importance of our port and where we and how it affects our city. And I want to make that be part of that change. I want to make everybody understand how important and vital it is to our community, as well as for financial purposes, as well as just businesses and all that kind of all wraps in together. So I'm thinking a little bit different perspective on things, a little younger would help. Sometimes a little shakeup of things will assist in that. And I think it's time for have that and maybe pass the torch on to someone else that can probably have a different perspective on things that we haven't had before. I think we started off great, but I think it's kind of balanced out and kind of not really puttered out, but not really taken off like I think it should and continues on. It should continue on being. So my perspective on it is trying to bring that new life to it and bring our city in a up and going path that I think it should be in.
Thank you. Don Meyer, please.
Hello, I'm Don Meyer, and I'm running for re-election to position for Port of Tacoma. I've been a commissioner since 2010, and prior to that time, I was involved in the redevelopment of the Foss Waterway, both in the cleaning up the waterway and the redevelopment of the uplands, like the Museum of Glass. Prior to that, I was also port staff. So I've been in and around the waterfront and the tide flats for quite some time, cleaning up contaminated properties and the redevelopment of those properties. My father was a Teamster, had a job in the tide flats. I know the value of good paying jobs in the tide flats and the benefits that they bring to families. So I love the reference where Port of Tacoma is referred to as the economic engine of Pierce County, one of the economic engines. But I also think it's equally important in my advocacy is environmental leadership. You can't have a good, successful port in a contemporary sense without some environmental leadership in a meaningful way. And I'm committed to that. We've set a goal of zero emissions And I want to make certain we achieve that by our actions of today. Whether you're talking about air and the idea that we replaced 440 trucks with cleaner burning engines, and we got 60 more to go. I'm committed to get all 60 of those. When we talk about water and the quality of water, I'm talking about fish habitat. When I think about the Salish Sea of today and the issues associated that we now see by the very symbols of our Pacific Northwest, fish habitat is a priority with me. I want to see 134 acres developed for fish habitat. So as I see the issue here, sea level rise is also a component of climate change, and it has to be accommodated in any decision making we have. So I love the challenge of economic development. I love the challenge of where we're at on an environmental program. And I view those as equally important. And I'm going to be a strong advocate in both of those segments. Thank you for the time. I appreciate the League of Women Voters organizing this event to be able to deliver a message directly to the citizens of Pierce County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you, TV Tacoma, for this opportunity. My name is Mary Bacon, and I'm a candidate for the Port of Tacoma Commissioner position number 4, and I've been prompted to run because we need more scientists in government. In 2006, I graduated from the University of Washington, Tacoma with my degree in environmental science. For the last 15 years, I have experience as an environmental toxicologist and health physicist in the Puget Sound. I will provide a perspective missing within our Port of Tacoma Commission. I'm seeking this elected office in order to provide a practical scientist viewpoint affirming our port's environmental stewardship by offering a professional opinion based on empirical evidence and technical knowledge. If elected, I will be the first working scientist to hold a Port of Tacoma Commissioner seat. I've also been the president of a federal union, and as a former labor leader, I will always advocate for workers and well-paying jobs. Our port's economic and environmental development is an opportunity to promote growth in our community by increasing employment and new business opportunities as our port becomes climate resilient. Combined with my unique background as a scientist who has worked in both the private and public sectors, my experience and insight will be an asset to our commission. If elected Commissioner number 4, I will create something that the port has never had before, and I will create the Port of Tacoma Climate Change Action Strategy. I propose the strategy's goals would address climate change, and the concurrent infrastructure development would be sustainable, inclusive, and equitable. The objectives would include lower emission development, prepare for and respond to climate-related impacts, and support innovative solutions and sustainable technologies. Our long-term outcomes would establish lower emissions, increased resilience to climate change, and the promotion of economic development. I would like to see our working waterfront continue to work into the next century, and I'm committed to that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all very much. We'll now turn to questions, and I'm going to be asking the same questions of each candidate. You have 90 seconds to answer each question, and I will rotate the order of the questions of who starts. We'll be starting with Don Meyer, then Mary Bacon, then Mario Rivera. Okay. So the first question is, how should the port demonstrate its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion through hiring and other practices? Don Meyer, please.
This is an important topic for all of us. When we passed the resolution on diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of the comments I publicly made was that I felt that the resolution was too weak. It didn't have an action plan. It didn't have really any reporting capability. I think that if we're going to be serious about this topic, we've got to definitely create an action plan that addresses those issues, whether it's in the recruitment or the idea of supporting people to get into the pipeline that otherwise typically don't get the opportunity to get in the pipeline. That's why I'm a strong advocate, as an example, is a maritime academy at the high school level as a way of encouraging students. And in my particular case, where I live, I want to see a component of that in the Pierce County Skills Center, because I'm not an advocate for everybody's got to be a 4-year college degree. I want to make certain that I be a proponent for the community that I live in, as well as underrepresented groups having access to good paying jobs. That's just but one example. I think also internally, procedurally, we've got to look at our own regulations. I think some of our job descriptions basically are a obstacle for reaching out to underserved communities, people of color, or whatever it might be. Plus the fact I'm an advocate of working with the Puyallup tribe. After the Puyallup settlement agreement, I was there trying to work on a joint venture with the tribe on some of the parcels that they've had. So I think when I think about the Port of Tacoma, the location of it and the responsibility we have of matching up employer needs with community needs, and a good paying job is all part of solving some of our social issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you. What I would like to see the port incorporate would be community workforce agreements so that we continue to employ our labor unions in the area. I would also like to see our Port of Tacoma employ minority and women-owned business enterprises, separate from the community workforce agreements. And these are things that I would be willing to develop as port commissioner, because neither of those two things also exist at our port right now. And that would absolutely increase interest and business for our community within our port. So thank you.
Mario Rivera.
Well, and that with that question is a great question, and I truly believe that education is key to our port as well as to the schools in our local schools. We don't have education, I don't believe, that I've seen that actually explains what is done in a port. I didn't know when I first came here to Washington, I didn't know what a person did in the port. I wasn't sure of that. And I think that's one of a lot of problems that goes on in our community now, is that we don't know. We just know as trucks go in and out of there. So I think education and the community and diverse communities and getting that in is key to making the communities understand that it is a vital resource for higher incomes, as well as like Mr. Myers said, it's a great thing because it's going to bring more people to it, as well as bringing the education to the people. So I think it's imperative that we bring that along with women. Bring women into the fold of things and making them understand that they can do the exact same thing that men do as in the port. I think it's kind of been boxed out, not intentionally, but it's just kind of one of those things that I've seen that is not something that's really thought of as a woman's job, quote unquote. And it's really not a woman's job, it's a person's job. So I think it's imperative that we work on that, and I bring that into the fold and really work towards getting that perspective put out to all the communities of our diverse communities, and our diverse communities are growing. So it's imperative that we do that and make our communities understand that this is a vital source of income, and it's going to be excellent to have them here and put their resources into our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with Mary Bacon. And what types of clean energy projects would you encourage? Please speak about potential uses of wind and/or battery power for vessels. Mary.
So some of the clean energies I would be interested in are some of the newer energies we're talking about, like the carbon neutral energies. And we're absolutely developing those now, and I anticipate that they will become more proficient in the future. What I would love to see at the Port of Tacoma is the incorporation of shore power so that we don't have berthed vessels running with diesel engines. In 2006, 15% of greenhouse gases from ocean-going vessels were while they were docked at berth. And so while we've got a vessel here in Tacoma and it's running, that's going to impact our air quality. So I would suggest shore power, which goes back to an energy alternative, which is definitely in our area, hydroelectric. But we do need to get away from fossil fuels. We must reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And as an environmental scientist, these are all alternatives and options that I'm willing to investigate to make sure that they're feasible and logical for what we need to do in our port. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mario Rivera, please.
I believe that there's multiple ways for us to have a fossil fuel-free port. Honestly, it's about money. about establishing the capabilities that are already there. A lot of the stuff is already there. I think we're all used to the same rigmarole that we've been doing for decades. No one wants to leave fossil fuels because it's just easy. I don't have to figure out anything. I don't have to think about anything. Just go get some gas, get some diesel, call it a done deal. I think we have to change our perspective on things and understand. The great example was this past on when we had 115-degree weather. Unheard of. Never happens. I've lived up here for 20 plus years. Are you kidding me? 115-degree weather in Washington? Unheard of. It's time to change it. It's time to get out of this perspective that climate change is not happening. If no other time it showed that climate change is happening, it happened. It showed us this past week. And it's time for us to really focus on moving forward with non-fossil fuels, electric devices to make sure it's out there. We just have to invest the time, the money, in trying to go a better way so we can stop ruining our environment. The reason why I came to Washington, it was because it was a beautiful state. I love everything here, and I don't want it to get ruined. And I want my children growing up here, and I definitely want them to enjoy what I've enjoyed and what made me love the city of Tacoma. So this is my perspective on that, and I would hope we can move forward and get this fixed and get it done fixed quickly.
Thank you. Don Meyer, please.
Thank you. When I think about clean energy, no question about it, the reference earlier about shore power, we've got one already with a shore power capability, another terminal that's on its way under construction. We need all of our terminals shore power capable. There's no question about it. It's good for the workers, it's good for the community, and we need to move in that way with the abundance of electricity we have in the Pacific Northwest. When you ask about wind and battery, I think the fact of the matter is the transition away from the fossil fuels is going to be caught up in wind. That's a natural thing. The other thing is when I think of batteries and solar, I mean, this is absolutely an incredible potential when I think about ships and the ability for us to get away from the fossil fuels, even with this new standard supposedly by the International Maritime Organization, I think is weak. We've been on record to say beef it up. This 1% sulfur fuel business is not adequate for our environment and the air quality in our communities. So the idea of going from the fossil fuels, we got to figure out that transition. There's an experiment that's going on in Europe about a fully battery operated ferry. I think that's great because the experimentation that needs to happen, it needs to happen quick and it needs to happen fast. But the reality is that I think the movement towards non-fossil fuel is going to happen in the marketplace. It has to happen. But I view the advocacy we need is at the International Maritime Organization to get off the duff and get a regulatory regime that's a lot stiffer than what the current standard is. And that is what's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, and we'll start with Mario Rivera on this next question. In what other ways can the port be at the forefront of promoting and eventually manufacturing ships that do not use fossil fuels?
I believe with the people that we have here, the technology we have right up the way, I don't see a reason why we couldn't have a joint venture with a lot of the companies that are already here to make things move a little easier, a little bit faster, bring the battery power, the solar power, all that stuff that we have at the tip of our fingers and we haven't utilized. I don't believe we utilize it as much as we probably could. I think a lot of it is everybody's kind of moving their own way and we're not really talking together and we're not really moving as a community like we should. I think that with the technology that we have and it's there and dealing with the maritime people who live here and the industry, we have to all come together and realize that this is a quintessential thing that we must do to make sure that we're moving forward in a positive, a financial way, as well as what do you call it, a demographic way as well, because we're growing. Our cities only get bigger, it's only get more people, and it's imperative that we get this taken care of because it's going to harm everybody and everybody who lives around here. So it's imperative that we find a way to do this without hurting anything. And I really think that's not a problem to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Don Meyer, please.
Oh, thank you very much. I would be when we say non-fossil fuels, my example would be renewable fuels as an example. I would be an advocate for providing incentives. If in fact they would utilize renewable fuels, I would like to see that we have the capability of accommodating vessels, non-fossil fuel vessels. I would be supportive of providing incentives so that when they come to the Port of Tacoma, that we know that this is the sort of a customer we would like to encourage to call at the Port of Tacoma. So I would focus in on incentives. The reality, though, is that when you come to ships and who makes those decisions, we're a small player relative to what those incentives could provide. But it's a statement of priorities by our community that I'm involved, that I would support. And I would say, if you want a certain outcome, then my experience says, then have incentives that encourage that outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Bacon.
I would propose clean energies for shipbuilding would be the example that I had the opportunity to experience, and that's with the United States Navy. They have a self-regulated nuclear program, and that is what propels all of our vessels for our United States Navy. And working with that, and there have been zero problems with their problem. If we could somehow capitalize on that kind of technology and benefit from it, to include what the Navy does with their spent reactors, perhaps we repurpose them for our new shipbuilding ventures. But nuclear energy is an option. The Navy has been doing it successfully for over 70 years. They have been doing it well. That would be an example that I would use. And shipbuilding, it's a hard industry. So to what Mario was saying, it's going to have to be everyone on board. And if we make this transition, we need to transition together. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question has to do with congestion, and we will start with Don Meyer on this one. To alleviate congestion in and around I-5, discuss the potential of increased use of rail and operating swing and graveyard shifts, as well as restricting trucks during peak commuter hours.
A great question, because one of the problems we fundamentally have is no matter how many roads we build, we always have, after they're built, they're congested. We all know that. And so this is a huge issue. I would say that there's several things that need to happen. I was happy to hear just recently the announcement of bus service down in the tide flats for workers in a very specific way. So I'm thinking the way we can cut down on congestion is mass transit, the capability of putting people in vehicles that can cut down on the single occupancy vehicles is one of the ways. I think the other piece to this is that when I look at the growth that we want to have, or our advocacy for growth, one of the things we're missing is a good using technology for the management of peak times for traffic. When we did the Taylor Way project, I was really chagrined at the fact that they cut out the intelligent management transportation system that was a key component of it, because that particular street in the tide flats is a major street for our fire station. It was like, wait a minute, why did that happen? Well, that was one of the things that we couldn't afford. Our community, it needs that sort of a management capability. So I would say we can't build our way out of this problem. We need to think about different dynamics as to how we manage traffic and how we basically encourage the gates, because that's the reference you made, was 24-hour operation. We need to be able, if we're going to be a competitive gateway, we've got to offer a service that makes it competitive. I fundamentally believe 24-hour gates.
Thank you. Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you. For congestion, I wish that we would have pushed a little bit harder on the 167 joining up to I-5. I wish we could have propelled that project a little bit closer to 2020 instead of 2030. But I understand it's expensive, it's an interstate, we've got many different constituents involved. But I agree with Don, we need to improve our infrastructure, we need to improve our public transit. I'm perplexed as to why we only have the Sounder go up to Seattle 4 or 5 times a day, when in fact, it should be running every hour, every half hour. We have a much more effective ferry service in this state than we have with public transit on our road. So we need to figure out how we're going to accommodate our growing population, because we're only going to get bigger. We're not going to magically lose a number of residents. We just need to make these accommodations. And we need to perhaps look at when we employ people down in the waterfront, and this is what Don also referenced, now the city of Tacoma has a transit for our workers. What a great idea. Let's take care of our workers and let's make sure they can get to work safely and we don't add another car to the road. So I agree. Let's take care of our workers, increase public transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Rivera.
The congestion that I've seen here for 20 plus years, ever since I've been here. I was happy to see that they were doing something with I-5 and widening the freeway, but it's been 20 years since that's been going on. I think there's a lot of things that's happening that I think has been either slow or caught up in a bunch of stuff that just doesn't benefit us at all. I think that I personally think, and I've thought about this, why isn't there a highway for the truckers to get on without any, basically hop on I-5 without any congestion at all, or easy access to right now where a lot of warehouses are being built down here in Frederickson and the Spanaway area. There's tons of warehouses that are being down. They're trying to open up and they're widening out Canyon Road to give access. Why not have access to the road that's going into Canyon? Because a lot of these trucks are going there. So I think it has to do with some of that. And I love the fact that, what Don said and Mary said about the bringing the port, bringing the people into the port, the workers into the port, in some sort of communal way, or by transit, something. We're not traveling that far, so why not use a bus? Why not have some sort of time sharing where, hey, we're all in the same area, let's take all our vehicles, just like we do with anything else. This to bypass a lot of the room and space that we're using with cars and making unnecessary traffic. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mary Bacon. How would you increase cooperation among the port, the city, and the Puyallup tribe? And what improvements do you think this would create? Mary.
I pride myself on my ability to collaborate and my ability to conclude things. One act I particularly like to speak of is that when I was the president of the union, I concluded a decade of contract negotiations in 5 months with ratification 2 months later. So when there's a problem, I dive in, I examine what's going on, and then I work with all the involved constituents to figure out how we can get out of this together, intact and sane. So my plan is to, of course, continue to communicate. And I would love to see standing appointments, where we visit with each other at least once a month and just talk about how things are going, what our concerns are. I would love to also see some maybe off the record appointments where we talk about what we personally feel about things and how we can make things better. And again, concerns we might not be able to share in a more formal forum, we could perhaps talk about in an informal setting. So I am all about conversation, collaboration, and dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you. Mario Rivera, please.
I think the collaboration, between the port and our Native community is imperative and vital. They're a vital source for our resource for people, the work in the port, as well as helping us understand what's around us in multiple ways, and having conversations, like Mary said, privately, on a regular basis. And the older I get, the more I realize communication is key to everything. Because if we don't understand what we're talking about or what we're doing, and we can never solve anything. Perception is 100%. If you perceive that you're going to be ignored, you're going to believe that you're ignored, and you're going to not listen to anyone. And I think that's probably part of the problem with us across the board. We're all kind of moving in these individual cubicles and communities, and we're really just all together, and we're not really utilizing that as much as we can, because we all have great ideas, we all have different perspectives. So why don't we tap into that and get that information from our native neighbors, and make them just feel as much a part of the community as they are, and hopefully we can come together and make this a better community, because it's already great, but I know it could be much better. So let's work. My thought is to work more with them and make them understand that we need them just as much as they need us. And hopefully they'll may hammer things out a lot better, and we can move faster with moving on the path that we all feel that we can move together. Thanks.
Thank you. Don Meyer, please.
Thank you. I really like what Mario made a reference to, because that really resonates with me in a very significant way as a person who participated in the Puyallup land claim settlement process. The port exists majority of the port exists within the tribal reservation. So the relationship with the Puyallup tribe is crucial, I believe, to the success of the Port of Tacoma today as well as tomorrow. I purposely made the reference to fish habitat because I had heard over the years Chairman Sterud talk about fish habitat. Why aren't we talking about fish habitat? Fish is important to the tribe culturally and economically and a variety of other things. So I want you to know that there is a purpose there. The other thing is that I've often felt one of the best ways for that relationship is that they have a key piece of property on the Blair Waterway. And after the settlement agreement, I was involved with trying to get a maritime customer there, because I fundamentally believe that we should share our customer base with the tribe to get a maritime program underway on that key piece of property, whatever it may be. And in fact, today, we are talking with the tribe on a possible maritime tenant. So I'm focused in around the natural resources issue as well as the business issues, because I think the degree to which we can work closely together is finding those projects that make sense both from a tribal standpoint and a community standpoint and a port standpoint. I'm committed to that. And the relationship with the Puyallup tribe is critically important. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, we'll start with Mario Rivera. And the question is, how would you balance port decisions taking into account revenue generation, job creation, and environmental protection? Mario.
That's a hard one, and that's not an easy thing. We definitely have to take everything into consideration. We have to look at how it's going to affect everybody in our community, and how it's going to be a vital piece. Each one of them are a vital piece. We have to look at how it's going to affect our neighbors, the tribe, the Puyallup tribe, and everybody else in the community. So to say it's going to be an easy answer, it's really not an easy answer. It's one of those things you really have to just roll your sleeves up, get in there, and find out how everything is going to affect everybody. And the best way you're going to have to do that is communication. Find out what they need, what's going on there, and find out each community and see how we can bring it all together, and see how we can all bring it together in one cohesive unit versus all separate pieces. And I think right now that's more crucial and more critical than any time ever before, because we're all being adversely affected in some form or fashion, whether it's by financial, whether it's by the lack of living places to go and live, housing, whatever the case may be. So to move on together and try to figure out together, I can't necessarily give you a quick answer on that, because then I'll be lying. So my thought is to say, hey, Let's bring it together. Let's bring it to the table. What can we do? What do you need? What do you need? Let's see what we can all do to make this one community versus several little communities put together. Thanks.
Thank you. Don.
Thank you. My normal reference to that question is what they call a triple bottom line, the economic, environmental, and financial. I think all three of them have to be considered. In fact, I was an advocate for changing the master policy resolution at the Port of Tacoma to include all three of those elements. So when you do a write-up and when the commission debates a particular action or a lease or a project, that all three of those elements are described for the public. So there's transparency around those three subjects. They all have to be considered. On the economic side, it's the amount of private investment. After all, the Port of Tacoma is a economic development entity, and that's our primary purpose. But it's not the only primary purpose, as I indicated earlier. The environmental has to be considered because we need full transparency relative to impacts. And on the financial side, my track record is I'm pretty conservative, and I've been, for the very first time on the budget, was the very first time I have voted since I've been a commissioner for the budget that lowered the increase in tax collections. Previously, the Port of Tacoma was increasing its tax levy collections by double-digit numbers. I finally got, thanks to the two new commissioners, and we all five then agreed, to limit the property tax collection increase to 3% rather than being 11 or 12 or 15% in some years. So I will suggest to you that I like a triple bottom line decision-making process. That is always paramount to me, and I will be an advocate always when the commission takes up a matter in public that all three of those have to be described and fully vetted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you for the question. I look at what's unique about our port, and one of the unique aspects of the Port of Tacoma is that we're a deep water harbor. So the bathymetry and the ecology of our area is really the reason that we have a Port of Tacoma. So for me personally, the environment is going to be one of our most important issues, because if we do not maintain our environment, we will not be able to maintain our Port of Tacoma, and that's going to affect everything, the financials and the employment. So if we continue to take care of Commencement Bay and our surrounding waterways, we will increase employment, we will increase investment in our port. And so that's what I see as a priority, because without the Puget Sound, we will not have a Port of Tacoma. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next question we'll start with Don Meyer. And please describe your vision for the port over the next 20 years. What changes would you like to see, and what changes do you fear that you will see?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, first of all, what do I see the port in terms of? I see a port that is diverse in nature. I see a port that has land parcels that they have fully developed. I see a port that has been has accomplished the objective of being cleaner in its activities and programs in terms of the environment, green technology being applied. I'd like to see us become a center for renewable fuels, for example. I'd like to make certain that the Port of Tacoma on the east side of the Fosk Waterway purchase land that's sitting there vacant. I want to build a maritime center. This is critically important to our community, as far as I'm concerned, because the ports bought parcels as a defensive move so residential construction didn't occur. I want to change the defensive move to an offensive move. And I want to create a maritime center. To me, that's the sort of vision that I see in the tide flats, a greener tide flats, a more diverse nature at the Port of Tacoma. We'll be handling cargo. I like the idea that boat building, as far as I'm concerned, when I look at the Martinet boat site next to a parcel property that the port has, I want to see the port actually purchase those sorts of derelict parcels, because our role is economic development. And so it's a risk taking, and I've been a risk taker all along. I'm about transformational leadership. And so I see a greener future. I see a future that basically says take your assets and deploy them to the fullest possible. I even think that when I look at other examples in New Jersey about a wind farm, the idea that manufacturers need a place to manufacture for offshore wind farms, we should have a place for them to utilize vacant lands at the Port of Tacoma. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Bacon, please.
What I see for the Port of Tacoma in 20 years is the implementation of the climate change action strategy that I mentioned earlier. In 20 years, there will be a 1.5-foot sea level rise. And what that says during a high tide event is approximately 45% of tide flat property will be submerged. So in 20 years, I see us having mitigated some of these problems, addressed them, and ensured that our assets are not lost because of our lack of action. My worry is that in 20 years, we have done nothing to address climate change. As I mentioned earlier, in the year 2050, 1.5 feet sea level rise. In the year 2100, 4.5 feet. So if you've been here and you've experienced a king tide, add a couple of feet onto that, and that is what we're looking at for our future. So that's my concern, is that if we do not take action now, we are dooming our waterfront for later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Rivera.
What I see in 20 years from now for the port, I definitely will co-sign on both Don and Mary's bill as far as they are trying to increase the maritime stuff, and as far as wind battery powered, why not have a manufacturer of batteries right in our own port? Why don't we have some of the things that we can do and utilize right here in our own backyard? We have the technology that's right in our backyard that we don't utilize as much as we probably should. 20 years, I would love to see the infrastructure as far as moving cargo and and trucks out of here very quickly and efficiently, and hopefully as efficiently as where it's not affecting us, and making sure that we add in the thought process of making sure our waterways are good for the next 20, 30, 100 years from now, and making sure that we are going in that direction, because climate change is happening, and it's definitely happening at a much faster rate than we probably realized that it was going to happen. Or I wouldn't say realize it was happening, I'd probably say more that we were willing to realize that it was happening. It's been told and warned to us for 40 years now. It's time. It's time to make that change, and it's time for us to start coming together to do that. And I feel that I can do that and help that and bring everybody together to do that, and stop with the dilly-dallying around, and make it, this is a crucial time in our lifetime to really make this happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question, and we will be starting with Mary Bacon, is what do you think is the most critical part of the port's new strategic plan?
I believe the most critical part of the port strategic plan is our emissions reduction. So going back to greenhouse gases, the reason we're experiencing climate change is because our planet is heating up. When we talk about thermal expansion, seawater expands more than fresh water. So by addressing emissions, we're actually going to be inadvertently identifying how we can perhaps slow the effects of climate change, but we're in it right now. So what we need to do is take the steps to reduce our emissions, and take the steps to react and accept the eventuality that our working waterfront, if we do not accommodate climate change, will not be a working waterfront in 100 years. It will simply be waterfront. So thank you.
Mario Rivera, please.
I believe that we definitely, like Mary said, have to work in our climate change reality. It's imperative that we move forward with that, and definitely come together and make sure that we have a straight end plan that's going to happen, not in 20 years, within the next 5, 10 years, 10 years worst case scenario. This is time to really work on that and get that taken care of, because this is our bread and water, bread and water right now. For all intents and purposes, if we don't do anything, it's detrimental to our future in all sense of fashion. So it's imperative that we do something, and do something very quickly. And Mary, being a scientist, is a great person to have on the squad to bring together. If I win, I would definitely call her. Anybody to make sure we can definitely bring things together to alleviate the issues and the problems that we have. And not just economically, it's not everything is just not economics. Other things that we have to remember. That's why we have our Native brothers and sisters that live right in our state. They know what's going on. They know how to handle stuff. They've been handling it for hundreds of years. We have to be out of our mind not to ask them what can benefit it. What can we do? What knowledge do you have that we can help help our community to make us all better? Thanks.
Thank you, Don Meyer.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The interesting part about the port strategic planning effort is that for the very first time, we reached out to the public and asked for public input, and we got it. Amazing. I was really worried about the virtual environment, whether or not people would even provide input. And out of that grew the main goals that you see there in this port strategic plan. I agree with the two other individuals who spoke earlier. To me, it's environmental leadership. That question used to be one that, well, that's a secondary consideration. The reality is that our customers, our community, they want to green up the logistics chain. That's what it's all about. And the issues of reducing carbon emissions, the issue of sea level rise, those are all relatively important topics for the future of the Port of Tacoma, without any question. So I'm there as environmental leadership is the most important piece, but it isn't just about leadership. The thing about my leadership style is that I know how to transform contaminated sites. I know how to develop environmental programs for implementation reality. Because what's missing, and I've made the comment before, is we don't have enough specificity. I'm one of these folks. I don't like PowerPoints and slogans. I like accountability, and tell me what's the outcome. And then if I can understand it, I'll be a strong advocate for it. But until I understand it, I think it's just a bunch of greenwashing, as a lot of people would say. So I'm for accountability behind environmental leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our last question. And this question we will start with Mario Rivera. Are the current safety plans adequate to protect the lives of employees and nearby residents in the event of a crisis at the port? What, if any, improvements should be made? Mario.
I've thought about this. Being a longshoreman for the short amount of time that I was in, it gave me a new respect for what they do. I did not understand, like I was saying before earlier, I didn't understand the duties and the dangers that go on in the port. I personally think there should be, I know there's a hospital that's right up the way, but I think there should be something a little bit more critical that's right next to us in the port. So it's an immediate, not having to drive through traffic, how to go through here, go there. It should be something right there in the port that can help, and there's probably one right there that's small. I never seen it, but I think there should definitely be some sort of hospital for the longshoremen and people in the community, a fire department that's all in fairly close. Some of the stuff is really close, but I think we can do a better job about that. Something that's critical care that's right then and there that can be helped with us and help the people there to make sure that they're safe. And if anything ever happens to them, there's no delay, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, and this needs to go on 24 hours a day, regardless if anything is coming in or not. Because the people who work in there, the longshoremen who work there, everybody who works in the port, they're all important. They're all the essential workers. Because without them, as we've seen this past year, without them, everything shuts down. And having the respect for them and knowing that we are we understand them and they want to make sure that we want them to live because we need them to live or so we can live. So it's important that we always acknowledge their safety and make sure that we're always on point and making sure that they're good to go and there's no issues and they can always be taken care of at any point. Thanks.
Thank you. Don Meyer, please.
Thank you very much. When I think of a crisis at the port, really, I think of a crisis in the tide flats and the preparation necessary there. So I like the fact that part of the LNG program and our overall agreement, either with the city of Tacoma, between PSC and the city of Tacoma or the port, was the idea of having a fire station close by. And when LNG was first being considered, and I led a group to a place that had a accident on an LNG facility, just to check out to see what the problem was and to see what the experience was. And what I quickly found was that there wasn't even any training for the fire department. They had no familiarity with the facility. So I'm happy to say at this stage of the game, I think that vulnerability is making certain our fire department knows all of the risks throughout the tide flats. This isn't just a conversation about the port and LNG. This is a conversation about our fire department being able to respond, being trained to be responsive. And so I would say safety always has to be a priority. On the waterfront, safety is paramount. But I also believe the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, we have accidents sometimes. And what's the response time to that? Are people trained for that? And I'm happy to say that I was really pleased that we've got a new fire station down there in the tide flats that can respond to those sorts of crises. But I want to take it a step further because we're doing a vulnerability assessment because it isn't just about a fire. It's about seismic. It's even the slow issue, but it'll happen, sea level rise or flooding or those sorts of things. We got to be prepared for all risk types of activities. So thank you.
Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you. I do have a few concerns with safety down in the tide flats. To include, the city of Tacoma does not have an updated tide flats emergency response plan. Their last one is dated from March 2016. And the updated Port of Tacoma evacuation map is dated for 2009. So there's two concerns I have right there is that we don't have those two things updated. And then with the fire station that was mentioned earlier, the status of the reopening of Fire Station 15, also now known as the new Fire Station number 5 on the Blair-Hylebus Peninsula, proximal to the LNG plant, is currently unknown. The Tacoma City Council in 2021-2022 budget removed from service the fire engine that was going to be assigned to that fire station, and without additional revenue, Fire Station 5 across the street will remain empty, and there will continue to be no emergency responders within the tide flats nor the Blair-Hylebus Peninsula. So at present, we don't have any primary responders in the tide flats. And for the future, we currently don't have any primary responders in the tide flats. So that's a concern that we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you. So now is time for closing statements. You'll each have up to 1 minute, and the order will be Don Meyer, Mario Rivera, and Mary Bacon. Don Meyer, please give the first closing statement.
Thank you very much. And again, I want to express a big thank you to the League of Women Voters and TV Tacoma. You've always done a very good job of this program. I just want to say my leadership style is transformational. I'm not a status quo person. My track record, my experience, and the issues that I see that the port is facing and the community is facing, I'm energized more than ever because I think there's a golden opportunity here to get things right. And I am committed to that. That drives me in my passion, and I want to do a better job for the community. I thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this program today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Rivera.
First of all, thank you, League of Women Voters. I appreciate you in so many ways. You were the first person who contacted me about this. This is my first stint. I'm not going to say I know it all, but I'm definitely willing to learn. And I think it's time for us to really look into different aspects that haven't been taken care of and things that have been overlooked over time. I think it's time for a change. I think it's time for us to look towards the future. Not that the past is bad, but I think the past is the past. We need to look at something more beneficial for us. Solar, battery powered items, all kind of things, security, the safety of our workers down there in the port or longshoremen. I think it's time for that change. I think it's time that somebody else takes on that torch. We appreciate all the help and everything that has happened in the past, but it's time for new leadership, and I think I can do that. And I appreciate the call, and I hope that we can move together and start doing something different. And appreciate it again for moderator for bringing me in, and I thank you guys, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Mary Bacon, please.
Thank you, TV Tacoma and League of Women Voters again. I hear that our Port of Tacoma extremely proud of its environmental stewardship. I've heard many mentions this evening of us being promoters of environmental leadership. So what I propose is that let's install an environmental scientist to our Port Commission to ensure that we're taking the appropriate steps and that we're not just talking about it, but we're actually doing it. I have work in restoration ecology. I'm a scientific scuba diver. All of the work I've done has been here in the Puget Sound, and I've worked around industrial areas my entire life. I look forward to bringing my experience and expertise to our Port of Tacoma Commission and bringing a new insight and perspective that has long been missing and is critically needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Rivera, Brian Duffy, Don Meyer, Mary Bacon, Nirav Sheth, Christopher Pierce, and Christian Delina are the 7 candidates for Tacoma's Port Position 4. Sibe Al and Scott Lewis decided not to run after all. However, their decisions were too late to withdraw their filings. Nirav Sheth, Brian Duffy, Christopher Pierce, and Christian Delina were unable to attend this forum. I would really like to thank the candidates who were able to join us today and the timekeeper, Susan Eidenshank, the Tacoma Pierce County League of Women Voters, TV Tacoma, and our community sponsors, the Affordable Housing Consortium, Black and Indigenous Organizing, Grit City Co-op, Latinx Unidos of South Sound, South End Neighborhood Council, Sumner Waller Community Association, the Urban League, Vibrant Schools, and the YWCA. And thank you for watching. You can see other League of Women Voters candidate forums at www.tacomapiercelwv.org. Read your voters pamphlet, look at vote411.org, that's vote411.org, where you can find answers to questions posed to all candidates running for office. Read the candidates' websites and do everything that you can to be an educated voter. And do not forget to vote before August 3rd. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.